Hi, my name is Rahim, and I'm currently sitting in Kinshasa in the DR Congo. Well, I grew up in Montreal, so everybody calls me in my French version of my name, which is Rahim. So Rahim is what I'm more used to than Rahim or Rahim, which is what some Lebanese friends now call me here. I don't know. My wife has this word that she uses to call me, but that's not really a nickname. I don't know if it's a nickname. Sometimes she calls me Poopki. I don't know where it's coming from, but this is just this.
My name is Nikita and I am based in Melbourne, Australia. I only had one, which is just a short form of my name, Nikki. So till now, a lot of my friends, even if I say to them my name is Nikita, they'll still call me Nikki. And my parents, my uncle, aunties, everyone would call me Nikki except my husband. He calls me with my full name.
My name is Megan, and I'm in Arlington, Virginia. So I think my standard nickname is just a short form like Nikita, so it's Meg. My mom used to call my sister and I Sweet Pea growing up. And so my Ismaili name is Alia, and the only person who calls me Alia is a former Muki Saib of our Jamaat Khana.
Hi, I'm Salman from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Okay, so growing up from parents, I didn't have a nickname, but I was called wrongly. I was always called Akbar. I have two brothers, they're older. So both of my brothers' name is Akbar. So my dad till date calls me Akbar. So and as my best friends in childhood used to call me Laddu because I used to be very fat. And surprisingly, I don't even like Laddu. I hate it. But yeah, I was called that. But now my best friends call me Mane.
Who here would say they are an optimist? Who here sings in the shower? Who here can dance? Who here was a naughty child? Who here was bullied as a child? Who here played with Legos? Who here played an instrument? Who here had dreams in which they would be famous one day? Who here moved around a lot over their lives? Who here grew up where money was always an issue? Who here would say they're hard on themselves? Who here would like to be more spiritual? Who here would like to eat better? Who here needs a lot of sleep? Who here knew what they wanted to do when they were young? Who here allows side dishes on their plate to mix and blend? Who here thinks that they're funny? Who here thinks other people think they're funny? Who here knows they make a great cup of chai? So if you could have this cup of chai with any person from history, who would it be?
Maybe Abraham Lincoln. Um, when I was young at school, we studied history, and we used to always admire the work that he has done. And not just maybe him, I would also think, because I lived in India, I would also think about Mahatma Gandhi and his, the way he led his life. It's very difficult at this point in time.
It would probably be either my grandmother or my husband's grandmother. I come from a really large family. My mom is one of 10, and so is my husband. My husband's mom is one of 10. And, they both were different women in their time. My grandmother was a homemaker. She raised her kids. She didn't have a job. And I would just I didn't really know her because she passed when I was young. And I just would really love to know what her life was like. And my husband's grandmother, an Ismaili Indian woman, she was ahead of her time, and she was traveling around the world for women's rights, specifically Ismaili women's rights. And I just would be fascinated to learn about her travels in her generation as an Indian Ismaili woman.
It would be two people that I can think of on top of my head. One would be Steve Jobs. Growing up, he's been my idol. He revolutionized the entire tech industry today. So his challenges and growing up and everything else, definitely. Second would be Sultan Muhammad Shah for sure, because he used to interact with people very often, and growing up with grandparents, hearing the stories, because they have witnessed his time and how he would come and do mehmanis in India and Pakistan. At that time, it was all Hindustan. So yeah, definitely would love to have and serve him a cup of chai and see how it goes then.
For me, it would be Napoleon, because I think that he's caused so much damage in history, and his I don't know if it's selfishness, but what he's done has led to so many millions of people dying so unnecessarily in history. I think it'd just be interesting for me to try to understand his psychology and see what he's thinking.
What is a challenge that you're going through right now in your life?
I think you have hit the nail right bullseye. So right now it's going through work. I'm in between switching works because the company is laying off and looking for other opportunities. And because I'm in Malaysia, I'm an expat, so that comes with a lot of difficulties here, getting a switch easily, because you have to look into visa constraints, and not every company who wants to hire you can offer you visa. So you have to look around other options and, work around. So that's my first and most important problem, and I'm dealing with right now.
I would have to say it's an institutional challenge, because I'm actually involved in a national council for DRC, and one of the biggest challenges we have is the education of our Jamaat, because in the DRC we don't really have excellent primary schools, and we're trying to find ways to accelerate that. We're also trying to find ways to complement the education of the children, perhaps with online tutors or maybe TKN volunteers or paid resources. Just we're trying to find the best way to bridge the gap, because it just seems that parents are a bit, left without tools at the moment.
So I think similar to Salman, my situation at the moment is juggling between work, family. We are going away on holiday. One of my son is on a school outdoor education for 8 weeks. So I thought I would have some free time because he's away, but my work is so busy. We have so many staff changes. And because it's my business, I need to make sure that I have enough staff before I head off to holiday in December. So it's just work is so crazy with family, like because I have two kids, so I'm still managing one with my husband. So it's just, it's just the busy time of the year for us.
So I think a challenge right now is raising a teenager. I have a really good kid, but it's a different time in life, and the way you parent a 5-year-old and the way you parent a 10-year-old and the way you parent a 15-year-old is very different. And my husband and I are trying our best, but it is challenging for sure. I joke with a lot of my friends and family that I take pride that I look pretty good for my age, but in 5 years or 4 years when my son graduates high school, I'm going to look very different with all the stress.
What do you do, and how does gender impact what you do?
So I'm the co-founder of a media company called Iron Butterfly Media. We are founded by women, we are staffed by women, and our programming is for women. So it affects gender equality affects every single thing that we do. We tell this in our podcasts and our documentary that we have done. We are telling the stories of women, both mostly in government, in the intelligence community, and in the military. And, we tell the good and bad stories of gender equality in those communities. We have women. What I didn't expect, being, founding this company and sharing the stories of these women, I don't necessarily think that was a goal, was to be a leader in gender equality or be a place where people come to, and that has been the result. We have a lot of women in these communities, or people who listen to our podcasts, who come to us and say, I'm having this issue. I'm a woman in this community. It doesn't have to be government. It could be in any industry. And I'm facing this issue as a woman. And we do not pretend to be experts, like you had mentioned. We just tried to support them, mentor them, and guide them to resources that could help them. But that it affects literally every single part of my day and every interaction I have in my company and the work that I do.
Professionally, I run my own accounting firm, and I've been in this profession for over 18 years now. Um, there was a stage where we only had female as all our team members. But in terms of gender inequality, what I would say is dealing with clients, sometimes some of the clients only want to speak to male. When they hear that we have a female entrepreneur or a female leading an accounting firm, I mean, it is not so common here about gender inequality in Australia. We still have equal employment opportunities here. But there are still those clients who actually only want to speak to, male accountants or tax agent or tax practitioner. So they won't say that to you directly, but when you have sort of a half an hour initial consultation with them, you get an idea that they are so much typical that they only want to speak to male members. But on the other hand, 90% of our clients are very happy working with females. So we don't feel that as a big concern here, because from a government perspective, equal employment opportunities are offered everywhere. And here you see so many women entrepreneurs. So I think, but there's still some challenges that we face, but which is manageable.
Okay, so I'm a UX and CX specialist. So people who don't know UX, it's user experience and customer experience. So yeah, so coming from tech, I think at least in this part of the world, in Malaysia, there's equal rights, there's equal opportunities, but I do see in terms of there's a pay gap. Unfortunately, that's there, right? So when I speak to my colleagues and the experience they bring in, just because they are not men, their pay is lower. Sometimes it's quite too low, which is surprising to see. You're figuring it out why. But that is the case, unfortunately, here. And sometimes when we send people from our office to speak to different organizations, let's say a recent incident happened with I wouldn't name, but a government organization. We had a meeting with government organization, and we sent a fellow UX designer. She was a lead, but she's a female. So the message that was given back to our manager was, next time if you send somebody, make sure you send them a lead who's a guy. So that was very shocking and very sad for us to know. But because it's government and it's business, money is involved, so the company has to they take a stand. They did reply, but the next time around they did send her, but also send another guy. So I think sometimes in places like this, if I was the manager, I probably wouldn't have sent a guy. I would have still sent the same, because I know she's equally or even more capable, perhaps. So why? Because the gender is making that difference. So I think in such situations, if you're at a leadership position, you need to take the stand for them. If you won't, then nobody will, and they will not gain confidence within themselves, unfortunately.
So for me, professionally, I manage a chain of private hospitals that my wife and I launched here in Kinshasa 11 years ago when we moved from Montreal. So gender inequality issues are quite prevalent in the society, in the Congo in general. I mean, there's this understood superiority of the men, but we try to have a majority of our staff, female staff, and we try to empower them so that in the whole hierarchy, we have women at every layer. And the directors of our hospitals are mostly women as well.
What do you think are the biggest issues with gender equality where you live right now?
Wow, that's a big question. the biggest issues in the US with gender equality, I would say, if the rest of the world is looking at us, they would say that we have it pretty good, right? If you're comparing it to, other countries. However, there's always, there's always room to grow. There's still a pay gap in multiple male-dominated industries. Women are still treated, as a class lower. I'm not saying that that's everywhere in every industry. We definitely, I think, comparatively across the world, have it better. However, I mentioned earlier, women still have to struggle. I still get stories of women who go into meetings and are expected to serve the coffee, or if they're wearing a skirt, men are commenting when they're grabbing a coffee or a donut, and they say a sly remark, or that's still happening. That especially in I like to say, a lot of our across the world, a lot of our organizations and institutions were developed by men. So, and there's no, there's no judgment there. They're just male ordered systems. And it is going to take a huge culture shift across the world, not just in the US, to shift from this male ordered system they were created by men, and they were run by men for so many years. And so it's going to take a while for that to change, and for women's for the culture of women being in leadership to be a normalized thing. When there are all women in a boardroom, for a man to say, oh, there's a lot of women in that boardroom. And that doesn't happen when they're all men in a boardroom, right? They don't say, oh, there's all men in the boardroom. So until we can just see it, holistically, there's still a lot of work to do.
Yes, I think I agree with Megan. What she said about the industries. There are a lot of industries which is pretty much male dominant. If I look at a lot of our clients, there are industry, I could easily name them on fingers, like engineering, manufacturing. All of those are like purely male dominant industry. Obviously, you would have women engineers doing chemical engineering, civil engineering, but most of the jobs, they go to male. So this is just to build upon what Megan was saying. In Australia, they are like employers are promoting equal employment opportunities. But when you talk to women in Jamaat Khana, or when you talk to women outside, you actually realize that there is a gap in pay. There is a gap in promotion opportunities. And what I feel is that, how we say that charity begins at home? This sort of change in that culture or the mindset should actually happen at home. If the husband treats wife equally, and if they are sharing the family responsibilities, then it just becomes part of that individual's value system. And if that becomes part of the individual value system, to follow that outside of the house just becomes part of their life. They don't have to do anything extra or do anything over and beyond what they are doing at home. But agree that this is going to be a really cultural shift. Somebody, I know, not just somebody, the entire world needs to take that step. And I think the realization factor is that when equal opportunities are given, it's not just social progress, there's economic progress as well, which needs to be taken into consideration. But yeah, that's how I have seen here in Australia.
I think, when the Me Too movement was starting and happening, I think what was really shocking to me was, it was finally being brought. It was something that everyone was talking about. It wasn't something that was private anymore. People were talking out loud, and they were talking about these issues and not, being shy about it. And I remember sitting down with my husband, and he wanted to talk about it because it was in the news. And he said to me, we were talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, and he said, has this ever happened to you? And I started to laugh, and I said, do you mean today? Because yes, it happens almost every day in different forms. And it could be very small, thing, a comment or a look, or it could be very egregious. But I think the fact that other men, I think it's changed a little bit here because of the Me Too movement, but they didn't realize the extent and how often this was happening. If you work in a large company and you're staying late and you have to walk to your car, right? Every single woman on earth would be nervous to walk to their car. They think about it. They might not even consciously think about it, but they'll say, oh, I have to have all my stuff together. I have to make sure I can go straight to my car. I have to have light. Maybe I have a key in my hand in case someone comes to me. Or take that same situation. If you work in a large company and it's a big building and you're working late and you're the only female left in the building, it is a thought like, am I safe? And for us, that's that's like a normal day-to-day thing. And I think for men, they don't, and even my husband, I have to remind him, he doesn't realize that is a constant in our head, is safety.
I agree with Megan and what she has said, but I wanted to think about it from a Jamaati perspective. When I talk to women in Jamaat Khana, a lot of times I have felt that they don't want to talk about gender inequality when it comes to talking about their family. So, for example, if they want to do something that will make them achieve their full potential, but if husband is saying no, or like Salman pointed out earlier, in-laws are saying no, they just don't want to talk about it. Just like, people don't want to talk about mental health issues, they feel that talking about gender inequality would also put us in a picture that may not, look equal in front of others.
So I think the issue of gender inequality is more prevalent in the areas of the Congo where you have lower education levels. Now, luckily, in our context, in our hospital, we employ obviously people that have completed university. So we see that they're a bit more at ease to discuss matters with their husbands, because in the Congo, the spouse is the head of the family. It's very patriarchal, and they have to make the decision. So we can often see that, some candidates are at unease at signing a contract. I need to ask my husband if it's okay for me to do night shifts, but it's a hospital, you have to do night shifts, right? And we'll provide the security or transportation back home. So, those issues are also, quite prevalent, around us here today.
On mental health side, what Megan mentioned is very true. On the outer professional life, I think it's way beyond just, because what you mentioned, Megan, my fellow colleagues have mentioned to me that some previous colleagues as well, that the bosses, right? We close with bosses, but in their personal time or whatsoever, they have hit on her or passed a comment and XYZ. I'm like, so why don't you raise it to HR? No, because they have the power. The power dynamics play a role. If something goes south, if the name comes out, I'm gone. I'm going to lose my job. And because it's a managerial person, they might make their life living hell in terms of professional capacity to be able to get another job and whatnot, because the word of mouth goes out very strong.
My wife and I were just having a discussion last night about how we deal with our daughter, because we have two boys and one girl, and she's 9 years old, and our eldest son is already 12, and we're thinking about rules to establish eventually, because they'll have to go out, and we're like, but she won't be able to go out as late as Ali Zain would. It's just the security in town, and so these are matters that we have to talk about, but it doesn't mean that she shouldn't feel empowered to grow to her fullest potential. So I think within the Jamaat as well, there's this constant fear that women have that, but my husband won't appreciate that, or my in-laws, as Salman said earlier. But I think it's important for every woman to stand up for their own selves, for their own rights, and be able to talk about it. I think this is part of the discussion we have with mental health as well. I think if the spouse is able to initiate a conversation with the spouse, with her husband, about these matters, I think she'll have a way out. If she just always assumes that there is no way out and it's not worth discussing this topic, she'll, as we say in French, elle va s'enfoncer. So she'll be, digging herself in a hole, and it'll be hard to get out. So I think, communication is key, and then just, feeling comfortable, talking to peers, talking to, whoever can help to get their advice, and then eventually coming out of that fear zone, right?
What gives you hope?
I think what I feel is empowering yourself by uplifting others. So if you're uplifting others and empowering yourself at the same time, that gives you a hope that gender equality is something that you can work towards. And I feel that equality is not about just proving your worth. It is actually about recognizing it, demanding the respect, getting the opportunities, the rights that comes with it. So if we lift each other together, like as one body, and challenge the stereotypes, because that's how we can bring the change. And that would be one of the hope that I would say is that would create spaces where everyone's potential can thrive, because true equality actually benefits everyone, not just women. So we are not talking only about women, we are actually talking about the whole society. And true equality thrives when we create spaces where everyone's voice is heard and valued. And I also feel that gender equality starts with believing in your own voice and encouraging others to do the same. So, you stand tall, advocate for yourself and others, push for that change, because equality is not about fitting into an existing system, but it's about transforming them for everyone, not just women.
So I couldn't agree with Nikita more as far as, I think something we haven't talked about yet is, we have kind of been comparing men and women, but women need to be uplifting other women. And for a long time there, if you were in a job or a leadership position, let's say at Jamaat Khana, there was only one position for a woman, right? So there was almost like this competition among women. And so now that is definitely changing, but we need to be uplifting each other. And as far as owning your own voice, I mean, that I couldn't stress that enough as well. You have to own your own power and your own voice. But I think what gives me hope is, at least in my space, in my, work community, I see all these women, rising to leadership positions, multiple women, not just one in, one position, but having the highest position be a woman and her deputies be women. And that is just, that needs to keep happening, not just one and done, but, having those women empower the women coming up behind them to take their places. And I think, my Jamaat Khana, I'm here in Washington, D.C. I don't know if people will like me using this word, but it's very progressive. It is very, we're a relatively young Jamaat Khana, and we are very diverse. People come from all over the world, all different ethnic backgrounds. I mean, you're looking at me, I am an Ismaili, and I don't look like the typical Ismaili. And our Jamaat Khana, I would say, is very pro-women, and we, both the husbands and, the women and the families, really uplift women and putting women in leadership positions. And so all of that just gives me so much hope.
I think, to me, I 100% agree with Nikita and Megan. I think it all starts with self-confidence. So I think hope and self-confidence are inextricably linked. It's important for women to feel that they deserve, better. They're capable themselves, and they can get out of their comfort zone. It's too easy to stay in your comfort zone. Try to leave the comfort zone. And I think that's what I'll try to teach. And I can see my daughter is quite progressive. She doesn't really see any difference between a man and a woman. She's like, what do you mean? I can do it too. Look, I'm super skilled, and he's actually as skilled as I am. So she doesn't see it, and I want to leave it like that. I don't want to change that perception. So let it be like that. But on the other hand, I just want to say that we often say that, okay, let's help the women, let's teach the women. But what about the man? And so I think that the behavioral change and behavioral sciences, we could use those concepts to talk to the men to say that what is your role in this? You need to also accept what your wife is capable of doing. You need to understand, what she desires. Have you talked to her about what her personal goals are? And in the DRC, when we launched the ECD initiative, which is early childhood education, we noticed that it was the women that were bringing their kids. And then we stopped that and we said, we need the fathers there. And we would call the fathers up. We would say, you need to be there. We can postpone it. If you're not available, no problem. It's tomorrow or whenever you're available. And today, I would say that 80% of the fathers are actually attending the ECD classes. And through the ECD classes, they're basically directly understanding what their role is and what the father's impact can be on the child's development. What is the consequence of not being present as a father? And so it's like all these frames that we use in behavioral science, the loss frame, the gain frame. Did you know that 70% of the Jamaat fathers are involved? Do you want to be involved? And what are the statistics about those that get involved and how their children come out to be so much more, more self-confident? Back to Nikita's point, right?
I think multiple things. First, I'll say chai. It gives me hope every day, first thing in the morning. But I mean, jokes apart, it's multiple things. See, how do I say? Let me phrase it. So, for example, it's the quest for tolerance. It's the dignity that we all need to strive for, which Hazram keeps mentioning a lot of times, again and again. When you see how his work plays a role, a butterfly effect, as we say. So seeing that somebody who holds the power in that sense, where I'm talking about Hazram, of course, how he is making small things, pivotal changes, plays a huge role. Because we all are part of society, right? We can complain from it, yes, but we, on our individual level, if we get inspired, if we start making changes on ourselves, it will automatically impact, right? So I love the approach that Rahim mentioned, that for ECD, they got fathers in. And I know my brother, he is like, he would be everywhere for my niece. He's like, I want to be there. He can't afford to miss out on anything. Like, his heart is on Zohar, right? So that's amazing to hear, because exactly. So see, those changes, those behavioral changes, people in position like, for example, Rahim, if he wouldn't have thought of, the team wouldn't have thought of this, it would have still stayed back to the old concepts where ECD, okay, mother will go be with the child, and it would have never brought that change. So such small things, having that awareness, and people at that leadership positions making that change plays a big role. So whoever those fathers are going to be, talk to their friends and across the globe, and they're like, yeah, man, I'm missing out on this. This is what's going to happen.
So this was, to me, a truly wonderful experience, because I was able to share some of my thoughts with people I had never met before, and to realize that many people actually share the same feelings and have the same sort of concerns about different topics of life. So we're not the only ones in our corner thinking one way. I think it's good to know that there is a collectivity, and together we can find actually great solutions.
I hope after watching this episode, a number of women would benefit out of it.
Very proud of being Ismaili, and thank you for Chais and my fellow brothers and sisters who were there. It was amazing to know you, meet you, and I sincerely hope that sometime we will be able to have our cup of chai in person and have this format come to life.
To meet Ismailis across the world and to, talk about a subject and a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And I just want to say thank you for the experience, and I hope everyone who watches it enjoys the conversation as much as I did.